I had never witnessed rage that raw, that unfiltered. It was like staring into a storm and realizing it had a face you used to call friend. It felt dangerous. Hi, my name is Janet. You may not know me, but if you stay for a moment, I'll share my story with you. I met Cynthia through a mutual friend. We had both received scholarships to pursue our first degrees in biology abroad. So the mutual friend shared my WhatsApp number with her. She reached out to me. She would contact me for information since I lived in the capital city of our home country, where the scholarship board's headquarters is located, making it easier for me to get updates for her. We met in person for the first time on the day we left our home country. We had planned to rent an apartment together and become housemates when we moved abroad, but that plan faded when we realized we had been assigned to two different cities within the same country to study biology. We said our goodbyes at the airport, and over time we lost touch as we navigated life in our new cities and settled in. Fast forward to 2 years later, I had reached a point where I no longer wanted to study biology and wished to change my course. The change of course application was only possible at the embassy located in City X, and the city I lived in, which I will refer to as City Y, was not too far from City X. I had visited the embassy a few times to inquire about the procedure, and on one occasion met Mr. Samuel, the man in charge. I explained my situation to him in tears. It was quite serious. I had completely withdrawn from the university where I was studying biology, hoping to successfully change to another course in another city, City Z. I was desperate. In hindsight, that was not a wise decision, but it was fueled by my utter disinterest in biology. He explained that while he was sympathetic, nothing could be done since the application window was not yet open. I had to wait. During that period, Cynthia and I somehow reconnected, only to realize that she was facing a similar issue. She also no longer wanted to study biology and wished to change her course. Unlike me, however, she was still enrolled at the university. During one of our conversations, she mentioned that since the city she lived in was quite far from City X, where the embassy was located, she was financially and physically strained from commuting often between the two cities. Though I knew that her business at the embassy was regarding the change of course application, I was unsure what exactly was causing her to commute so frequently, given that the application was not yet open. At the time, I lived in a 4-bedroom apartment, and 3 of the rooms were empty because the landlord had not found any tenants. Since I was able to help, I told her that the next time she needed to go to the embassy, she could come to my house and commute from there. I hosted her twice. Her first stay was for about 3 days, while the second lasted around a week. On both occasions, we had to sleep in the living room because my bedroom had a single bed, the weather was hot, and I only had one standing fan. If she had stayed in one of the other rooms, she would have had to sleep in the heat without a fan. Sleeping in the living room was actually not bad. It had a sofa bed, big enough for the 2 of us to sleep on. I know she had a good time because there was always a positive atmosphere and good energy. I cooked for her, we ate together, and went shopping a few times. After each visit, she would send me a WhatsApp message, telling me she had arrived at her house and thanking me for accommodating her. When the change of course application window finally opened, I informed Cynthia that I would go to the embassy to confirm all the requirements and submit my application. She asked me to help her submit her documents, which she would send to me electronically. I was happy to assist her. Unfortunately, she experienced some delays in obtaining some of the required documents, so she mentioned that she would submit them herself when everything was ready. Now, since our change of course application was for the same university in another city, City Z, we decided to look for and rent a new apartment together in the city and become housemates. We wanted to have relocated and settled into our new apartment by the time our application results came out. Though we did not know how the applications would turn out, we were hopeful they would be approved. Anyway, since we had lived together on 2 different occasions without any issues, I had no reservations. However, one day she called to tell me that her friend living in City Z was moving out of her 1-bedroom apartment, and she wanted to move in immediately. I was quite taken aback because this was not the plan, but at the same time, I understood where she was coming from. Good and affordable accommodation in City Z was hard to come by, and it was easier for her to buy all her friends' furniture and not have to worry about any of that. All she had to do was move in with her suitcases. I did not hold it against her, but I understood then that it was every man for himself. I, on the other hand, faced a difficult decision. I did not want to renew the rent for my apartment in City Y for the next month, only to relocate to City Z within that same time frame if the change of course application was successful, thereby incurring another rent fee for the same month. So, should I relocate fully to City Z just like Cynthia did, or should I renew my rent where I was currently residing? I decided that it was too risky to relocate to another city without an approved change of course application. Therefore, I decided to contact 2 acquaintances, Liz and Grace, whom I had met during one of my visits to the embassy and who lived in City Z. They had mentioned having a free room in their apartment, so I called to explain my situation, check if the room was still available, and if so, whether I could stay with them for a few weeks to follow up on my application and regularly visit the new university I intended to move to see if anyone there could help me facilitate the process. Luckily, the room was still available, and they agreed to host me for the requested duration. I was ecstatic. I called Cynthia to let her know my arrangements since she now lived in City Z. She told me she thought I was going to stay with her. I guess she wanted to return the hosting favor. I explained to her that I would visit her since her apartment was not far from where I would be staying. Liz and Grace made me feel comfortable in their apartment, and we quickly became friends. I visited the embassy often while I was with them, a few times with Cynthia when she was available. I also went to her apartment from time to time, where I would share any new information I received. Sometimes we would even stay up late writing letters to send to the dean of our intended new university, or simply discussing how slow the entire process was proving to be. However, I soon realized over time that she was not pursuing this change of course endeavor as eagerly as I was. I wasn't surprised because, again, we were in 2 very different situations. She was still enrolled in a university and I was not. She had something to fall back on and I did not. I had more to lose, plain and simple. During one of my visits to her apartment, she mentioned how beneficial it would have been to have Mr. Samuel's phone number, the man in charge of the change of course applications, so that we could have direct contact with him and not have to go to the embassy. Unfortunately, we both knew that embassy officials' phone numbers were very confidential, and having access to them was not something that came easily. I stayed with Liz and Grace for about 3 weeks, after which I had to leave because they found someone interested in paying for the room I was staying in. They had informed me before they started looking for a new housemate. I was very grateful for their hospitality. I had already told Cynthia that I would be coming over to stay with her when Liz and Grace's new housemate moved in. She said it was fine. Mr. Samuel had informed us when to expect feedback from the embassy regarding our application, and only 5 days remained until that date, so I knew I would be staying a maximum of a week at Cynthia's. 2 days before the new housemate moved in, I called Cynthia to remind her that I'd be arriving in 2 days. Again, she said it was fine. When I arrived at Cynthia's apartment, I sensed some weird energy from her, but I brushed it off, thinking it was all in my head. It was late in the evening. The next morning, that awkward energy still lingered in the room. She was being a bit passive-aggressive towards me. I decided to cook a meal for both of us with the groceries I had brought along. That might cheer her up, I thought. I also did not want her to feel like I had come to deplete her resources. But first, I needed to brush my teeth and take a shower. When I returned from brushing my teeth, I immediately sensed that the energy had shifted. It was worse than before. I just knew that whatever the problem was, food was definitely not going to fix it. I asked her what the problem was. She immediately went on a rant, complaining about how I was very secretive and doing things on my own when she thought we were both applying for the change of course together. I was genuinely confused. Where was all this coming from? What does she mean by secretive? Every bit of information I had received from the embassy I had shared with her. She knew everything I had done because I told her. So what does she mean by secretive? She just kept beating around the bush, complaining, but not really providing anything to support her strong claims of betrayal. Eventually, she shouted back at me, saying that all this while I had Mr. Samuel's phone number and lied that I did not, and that I had been talking to him behind her back. I see there was a very straightforward explanation for that. The previous day, that is, the day I moved into Cynthia's apartment, one of the executive council members of our student association reached out to me. He said that Mr. Samuel asked him to give me his phone number so I could contact him on WhatsApp. When I sent Mr. Samuel a message, he called back later to say that as much as he would try his best to help the students who had applied for the change of course, he could not guarantee anything, especially for me, who was not even currently enrolled in any university. If anything, it was more likely that the application would be rejected. He said he just wanted to tell me this directly since my case was critically different from the rest. This was the explanation for Cynthia. If only she would calm down for a moment and hear me out, she would realize that I did not lie to her, and this was just a misunderstanding, that I only got hold of Mr. Samuel's number just yesterday, and that I have not been making connections behind her back and keeping her out of any plan. I tried to talk, but her voice overshadowed mine. She called me a slew of names: fake friend, liar, toxic. There was no point in walking out of that situation because where was I supposed to go? I didn't have anywhere else to go. I needed her. So I decided it would be best to just sit down and be quiet. Hopefully that would make her calm down enough to hear me out. I was so unhappy that I decided to call my brother on WhatsApp and let him know what was going on. He was not online, so I decided to leave a voice note for him. Cynthia saw me recording, which aggravated her even more. She continued shouting and asking me why I was recording her. I shouted back, explaining that I was sending a voice note to my brother and not recording her. I told her she needed to calm down because she was getting too angry. The next thing I knew, Cynthia rushed towards me and grabbed my phone from my hands, refusing to give it back. Can you just imagine? Why was she seizing my phone? I told her to hand it back. Do you know what she did instead? She grabbed me, pushed me against the wall, and gripped my shirt around the neck area, all the while shouting and insulting me. I was livid. If I were to slap her, I would be justified. I had never witnessed rage that raw, that unfiltered. It was like staring into a storm and realizing it had a face you used to call friend. It felt dangerous. I could see she wanted me to retaliate, but I refused to engage. She was physically bigger than me. Eventually, she let go of me and gave me my phone. She then dialed her friend on her mobile and told her everything that was going on while still calling me names. So it was okay for her to communicate with people and say things about me that were not true. But the moment I picked up my phone to communicate with my brother, there was a problem? It made no sense to me, but it was her house. She could do whatever she liked. After the call, she told me that she was going to take a bath and did not want to see me or my things when she returned. She didn't have to tell me twice. I gave her a piece of my mind before leaving. I was already leaving, so why not? Long story short, I told her that I had been a true friend to her. How can I be the fake friend when I was the one she called when she needed accommodation in a city where she had her so-called real friends? How can I be the fake friend when I was the one she called for help submitting her change of course application at the embassy? I also explained how and when I got Mr. Samuel's number. Amidst the commotion, I hadn't even thought about how Cynthia discovered that I had Mr. Samuel's phone number. It turned out that she had gone through my phone while I was brushing my teeth. I hurriedly packed my belongings into my bag. Hungry, tired, and dirty, I left Cynthia's apartment. As I stepped out of her apartment, a surge of emotions crashed over me. Anger, sadness, helplessness, and disbelief. It hadn't even been 24 hours. The realization that all this had happened less than a day after moving in with Cynthia left me speechless. I felt completely alone and needed to talk to someone. With no other options, I walked back to Liz and Grace's apartment. On the way, a memory clawed its way back. The warning from another friend, one I should have listened to. She told me Cynthia wasn't to be trusted, that they had once been close, but Cynthia had proved to be a terrible friend. I remember brushing it off, telling myself, people change. I wanted to believe she had changed, so I gave her the benefit of the doubt, and now I was paying the price for that choice. Of course, Liz and Grace were surprised to see me when I returned to their house only a day after leaving. I knew the spare room was no longer available, so it wasn't like I was hoping to stay over, I just didn't know where else to go to. They had a visitor when I arrived. After narrating my ordeal, they sympathized with me. The visitor even remarked how she used to be friends with Cynthia, but again, she proved to be a terrible friend, and so the friendship ended. I guess this was a recurring pattern with Cynthia. One of Liz and Grace's friends, Mary, had a spare room in her apartment, so we called her and she arranged for me to stay with her. A few hours later, the final blow landed. Mr. Samuel called. My change of course application had been denied. That day couldn't possibly have gotten any worse, and yet it did. First assault, then rejection. He asked me to visit him at the embassy the next day. After the phone call, I wept. It was easily one of the worst days of my life. All I could think was, what's left to say when my hope has just been shattered? When I arrived at Mr. Salmon's office the next day, he expressed his regret for being unable to help me. I also told him what had transpired between Cynthia and I. He was surprised and could not believe that I had been treated that way. He asked if he should call Cynthia, and I agreed and gave him her number for 2 reasons. First, Cynthia would now have Mr. Samuel's number and could contact him directly regarding her application. Second, with Mr. Samuel confirming my story, Cynthia would finally believe that I had never lied to her and had been truthful all along. After my meeting with Mr. Samuel, I sent Cynthia a final WhatsApp message. In that message, I recounted how I had helped her in the past and how when the tables were turned and I needed her, she repaid my goodwill with insults and assault. I sent the message and blocked her. Upon returning to Mary's apartment, she informed me that while I was away, Cynthia had stopped by to see me and apologized for her behavior, explaining that she tends not to listen whenever she gets angry. I guess Mr. Samuel had spoken to her. It also turned out that Cynthia had been trying to reach me but could not. As I mentioned earlier, I had blocked her after my visit with Mr. Samuel. I told Mary that I held nothing against Cynthia. The only thing I wanted her to do if she truly felt bad, as she claimed, was to stop talking about me and spreading false information. To be honest, I did not want to have anything to do with Cynthia again. I had seen enough. I could not be friends with someone who erupts in fits of anger at the slightest misunderstanding. The aggressiveness I experienced was overwhelming. I left Mary's apartment since there was nothing keeping me there any longer and returned to my apartment in City Y. I renewed my rent just on time and started the process of re-enrolling in the university where I was studying biology. Honestly, it was not easy, but God made a way for me, and I was accepted back at the university to continue my degree in biology. Another change of course opportunity came up a year later. I tried again, and to God be all the glory. It was successful this time around. If this story moved you, let it move through you, into the way you see, listen, speak, and live.